Touchdown, Alabama, let's get it.
The process, no one can stop this. Hottest show in the streets, I bet you can't top this. Rammer, jammer, yellow hammer, come see how we rock this. Alabama fans the best, there's no way you can top this. Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
The process.
Welcome into The Process, Crimson Tide Recruiting. I am your host, Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama magazine. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on Touchdown Alabama's YouTube page. If you're not subscribed to Touchdown Alabama on YouTube, do that right now. Really quickly, hit that subscribe button below. Also, be sure to leave a like whether you are subscribed or not. I am going to be here every Tuesday and Thursday evening to break down the latest in Crimson Tide football recruiting news. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave that like whether you are subscribed or not. On today's episode, to kick off another great week of fantastic shows here on Touchdown Alabama's YouTube page, I do want to discuss Alabama's in-state recruiting efforts. They picked up a huge commitment on Sunday from four-star athlete Antonio Kite. He joins the Tide's 2022 recruiting class, and their five-star running back commit Emmanuel Henderson as the Tide's second in-state commit during the 2022 recruiting cycle. They still have their eyes on quite a few in-state prospects in this recruiting cycle. I do want to discuss those guys. Before I get that opportunity, I want to shine a light on a couple of guys who committed elsewhere recently, and also talk about a prospect from Georgia who is set to announce his commitment soon in a bit of a different way. And that guy is Jake Pope, the 2022 defensive back out of Bruford High School in Bruford, Georgia. He officially visited the University of Alabama in the last week, where official visits were allowed in the month of June, and Pope got an opportunity to take in the University of Alabama for the first time as a recruit on an official visit. He did visit earlier in the year, but he did not get an opportunity to talk to any coaches, but he did get an opportunity to just check out campus. He was not allowed to talk to any coaches because of the recruiting dead period that was put in place, but he got on campus during the month of June to take that official visit, got that opportunity, that chance to speak with Alabama's coaches, got a chance to see all of the different facilities, all of the different academic advantages that Alabama athletes enjoy when they play for Alabama football. And he said it was an amazing time. He enjoyed the family vibe in Tuscaloosa, and he will announce his commitment silently in a couple of days, or possibly another week or so. Very soon he will tell a school that he is verbally committed to them, but he will not announce that information publicly until a little bit after that. So that is something to pay attention to as far as Alabama's 2022 defensive back recruiting efforts are concerned. They picked up Antonio Kite. He is expected to play defensive back at the next level for the Crimson Tide. At the moment, he is the only 2022 a 2022 recruit that is committed to Alabama, who is expected to play defensive back at the next level. So if the Crimson Tide could pull in a Jake Pope, I think this would be huge for Alabama during this 2022 recruiting cycle, because Pope is easily one of the most underrated prospects in this particular recruiting class. We will see what his decisions will be very soon. I feel Alabama has a chance, but it's a dogfight between a couple of different programs for one of the top defensive backs in this 2022 recruiting class, in my opinion. Now I want to turn my attention to a couple of guys, a group of guys who committed elsewhere, who the Crimson Tide either hosted for visits during the month of June, or I feel Alabama is considering them really high during this 2022 recruiting cycle. One of those guys is three-star defensive back Devin Moore. We highlighted him on the process a couple of episodes back. We talked about Nick Saban and really seemed to like him. He actually committed to Notre Dame recently. Kojo Antwi, a four-star wide receiver who Alabama hosted earlier in the month of June, committed to Ohio State. Nicholas Singleton, Alabama hosted him for an official visit during the month of June as well. He is a four-star running back out of Pennsylvania. He verbally committed to Penn State, so he is staying home inside of his home state. Jacob Sexton also took an official visit to the University of Alabama last month. He is staying in state as well. He's going to commit to the University of Oklahoma, and he's set to be a part of their 2022 recruiting class. But as I said at the top of the show, I do want to focus this on Alabama's in-state prospects. See those guys committing in-state choosing to stay home. Alabama wants a couple of guys to stay home in this 2022 recruiting class as well. And one of those guys is 5-star linebacker Jeremiah Alexander out of Thompson High School in Alabaster, Alabama. He was once verbally committed to Alabama. He committed, opened his recruitment up. He did make it clear that he still had love for Alabama, still loved his family at Alabama, because he was verbally committed to the Crimson Tide for a little bit of time when he was committed to them. So it is not odd to think that Alabama could pull back in his verbal commitment on Thursday. He is set to announce his commitment on July 8th, Thursday, this upcoming Thursday. And when you look at Jeremiah Alexander, although most recruiting sites have him listed as a defensive end or an edge rusher, he is a linebacker. He is expected to play inside linebacker for the Crimson Tide at the next level, and I think that is his natural position. I saw him mature into that position over the last couple of seasons for Thompson High School. He did start off as more of a defensive end, but when you took a look at him this past season for Thompson High School, you saw him play everywhere for the Warriors on defense. He played a lot of inside linebacker, transition to defensive end at times. He moved all over that defense, and I think that showed his maturity, showed his high football IQ, and I think that is what he brings to the table. A guy with a high football IQ. He has a high motor, can play all over the defense, and I think his true position is an inside linebacker as a captain on a defense, a guy who I feel can master Alabama's defense in a short amount of time. So I think if Alabama can get a verbal commitment from him, it will be huge in this 2022 recruiting class. Alabama is battling it out with a couple of different programs. One of those programs is Clemson University. Alexander did publicly release that Clemson was his leader after taking a visit to them during the month of June. He also took a visit to Georgia. He has always seen Georgia as a possibility, a possible landing spot before verbally committing to Alabama. When he was verbally committed to them, he listed Georgia in his top 3 along with Alabama and LSU. So the Bulldogs have always been involved in his recruitment. So at the moment, I feel this is a battle that's going to come down to those 3 programs. Alabama definitely has a chance to possibly land a commitment from him on Thursday. So that is something to look out for. Alexander has been at the top of Alabama's recruiting board for quite some time, but a new guy who is starting to emerge for the Crimson Tide in this 2022 recruiting class is a wide receiver out of Calera High School in Calera, Alabama. We are going to stay in Shelby County as a 2022 wide receiver out of Calera, and Kobe Prentice recently reported an Alabama offer. His offer sort of came out of nowhere in terms of his name coming out of nowhere. He did camp at the University of Alabama a couple of times in June, actually ran a 4.38 in the 40-yard dash. He was really impressive, and if you take a look at his film, as we are going to show you guys what he can do on the field, he brings a lot to the table. That quickness, that speed, which led him to run that 4.38 40 comes to the forefront on his film. But there is a lot of other things to like about his game. You can tell that he has great ball skills, a guy who can attack the football, has a nice vertical, can go up and get the football at 5'10" and 170 pounds. He's a bit on the shorter side in terms of average height at the wide receiver position, but he's a guy who shows a lot of potential. And with that speed and with that type of size that it currently has and that frame, he's a guy who you really can build on. And he's a guy who you want to add to your team when you talk about a guy who has that type of speed. So Kobe Prentice is a guy who recently got that offer from Alabama. He told me it was a dream come true when he found out that he had the offer. He had to go outside. He had to leave his friends. He was chilling with his friends. He had to go outside and give praise to God. He really loves Alabama football, grew up an Alabama fan, said that he feels that Alabama is wide receiver youth, so he has a lot of respect for the Alabama football program. Just as Finkley is another prospect Alabama wants to keep inside the state in the 2022 recruiting class. Finkley is a product of Trussville High School in Trussville, Alabama. He's rated as a 4-star recruit here in this 2022 recruiting cycle. He recently released a final 3 and included Alabama, Texas, and Colorado. I know a lot of people may think, why is Colorado in a final 3 with Alabama and Texas for a kid who is from the state of Alabama? Well, Colorado is included in Finkley's top 3, his final 3, because his dad actually grew up a fan of Colorado football. He grew up watching a lot of Colorado football. They took a visit to Colorado during the month of June. They have a lot of respect for that particular program. So his parents are a huge fan of that particular program. So he included them in his final 3. Texas has been able to build a great relationship with Finkley and his family, so it's no surprise that they are included in his final three as well, along with the Crimson Tide. Got an opportunity to visit Alabama recently. The Crimson Tide have been recruiting him heavily over the last couple of months, I would say. I remember I got an opportunity to see here at Trustfield take on Vestavia Hills earlier in his junior season, and after that game, I caught up with Finkley, and he told me Alabama's defensive back coach at the time, Carl Scott, and Alabama's current wide receiver coach, Harmon Wiggins, were in contact with them on a pretty much consistent basis. So it's no surprise Alabama is still involved in his recruitment. He would be another huge pickup for Alabama. I feel that the Crimson Tide want to add a good amount of defensive ends in this 2022 recruiting cycle. Finkley checks that box. A guy who provides quickness from that particular position, has a very thick frame, a muscular kid. If you saw him walk on a football field, you would automatically say, what D1 school is he going to, which school is going to sign him, because he just fits the mold and looks like a D1 college football player right now. So Alabama is included in his final three. I think they have a great opportunity to land him. I think at the end, it is going to come down to the Longhorns and the Crimson Tide for the 4-star defensive lineman out of here at Trussville High School in Trussville, Alabama. The last guy I want to talk about today is Treycoin Figgins, the 4-star defensive back out of Thompson High School. He recently transferred from Oxford to Thompson, and I feel Alabama is really high on Treycoin Figgins at the moment. I think the Crimson Tide are in a great position with the 4-star defensive back. He took a visit to Tuscaloosa during the month of June. I think Alabama has taking the position as far as being in the driver's seat for Figgins. And when you take a look at Jeremiah Alexander announcing his verbal commitment on Thursday, this could have an impact on Treycoin Figgins' recruitment now that they will be teammates this upcoming season. And when you just consider that entire Thompson defense that is expected to take the field for the Warriors this upcoming season, the defense is expected to be really, really good, because you have Jeremiah Alexander as your starting inside linebacker, as the captain of the defense. You have Treycoin Figgins on the back end now, and he is joined by 5-star cornerback Tony Mitchell. You also have a 5-star defensive lineman in Peter Woods up front for the Warriors. So I am excited to see that particular team take the field. As far as that particular group having an impact on Alabama football recruiting now and in the future, it definitely could have a huge impact. Like I said earlier, Alexander and Figgins will have an opportunity to play together this upcoming season, something that they could continue to do at Alabama in the future. They could also bring along Peter Woods or possibly Tony Mitchell in the future, 2 5-star recruits who have Alabama offers. Alabama is going to push for those guys really hard in the 2023 recruiting cycle. Figgins and Mitchell actually already have some chemistry. They played together for Southern Express 7-on-7 for a couple of years under Byron Diviner. So that is just an interesting development in terms of Treycoin Figgins transferring from Oxford to Thompson High School to play for the Warriors this upcoming season. Figgins continues to be one of the top targets inside the state, who I feel Alabama fans should definitely pay attention to. But that is what I wanted to do on today's show. Put a focus on the Tide's in-state targets in this 2022 recruiting class. Thank you guys so much for joining me on Touchdown Alabama's YouTube page. If you're not subscribed to Touchdown Alabama YouTube, do that before you leave. Hit that subscribe button below. Also, be sure to leave a like whether you are subscribed or not. Then head over to touchdownalabama.com. Pick up your subscription today. With that subscription, you will be able to read all of our subscriber-only articles, get your hands on our yearly print magazine issue, then head over to the Apple App Store if you have an Apple device, or to the Google Play Store if you have an Android device, to download the Touchdown Alabama app. With that app, breaking news notifications can be sent to your mobile device. As always, I am Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama magazine.
Process.